Hello, I'm Shannon Caine. Today on the Caine Interviews, I'll be talking with Hal Marshall, who operates a website called longrifles.com. He collects antique weaponry, specifically muzzle-loading rifles, and today we'll be learning about these unique and fascinating weapons. Hal, your website, longrifles.com, is geared toward muzzle-loading and black powder enthusiasts. Has there been a lot of interest in your site?
Well, Shannon, there's been some interest in terms of if it outranks one site any better than another. I couldn't really give you that type of statistic, but since the site has came online, we average about 2,000 to 3,000 unique visits a month.
Okay. How long has your site been online?
It's been online since 1997, and the site doesn't necessarily provide things like articles and how-tos and so forth. It's a lot of diverse links that they can take you out to the resources, get you right to where you want to go in terms of what you may be looking for in black powder type of weapons or clothing, that type of thing.
Okay. Is muzzle loading increasing in popularity?
Absolutely. Within the past 20 years, the muzzle loading field has seen a dramatic growth. The biggest driving factor in that has been the state's decisions to create a muzzle-loading deer season. And so that's offered more people the opportunity to get out and participate in those activities, and naturally that increases the sales of the muzzle-loading equipment.
Okay, when is Arkansas's muzzle-loading season?
The muzzle-loading season in Arkansas will typically take place in the October time frame. It usually starts around the middle of the month, will run for about 7 days or so, and then there will be another hunt in the December or sometimes January time frame.
Okay. So you actually do hunt with these rifles?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What draws you to antique rifles when the modern weapons would seem to fire faster and with more accuracy?
Well, better isn't necessarily always best. For me, it was the thrill of the challenge of being able to try to hunt with a primitive type of weapon that basically is only going to give you one shot to accomplish a successful hunt. And I found that to be quite a draw in terms of wanting to get into it. Can I take this 10-pound piece of metal and lug it around through the woods and try to get a feel for of what the early Americans would have experienced? And fortunately, the biggest challenge of that I didn't have to experience, which is if I had a successful hunt or not. Means if I ate dinner or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, now do a lot of historical reenactors use muzzle-loading rifles?
Oh, absolutely. And you'll normally find that the types of rifles will fit the period of what they're reenacting. For example, a Civil War reenactor will probably have something like a percussion or a sharps type of weapon. You won't see many flintlocks, whereas your reenactors of early Eastern America would have nothing but flintlocks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you personally do reenactments yourself?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. It's one of those things that I would love to do. It looks like it's a lot of fun, but right now it's the priorities that I've got are holding me back from that, but we'll get there eventually.
Okay. In which American historical period were muzzle-loading rifles popular?
I would say that in terms of popularity, there's always been a degree of popularity there, but I would say in terms of the most prolific would probably be the time periods of the 1650s, somewhere in there to about the 1820s. That was the pretty much covered the entire era of the flintlock type of weapon, and everything else that even up to the rifles we have today is an evolution from that point.
Mm-hmm. Are very many women involved in muzzle loading?
There are, in terms of some statistics to kind of give an idea. Women make up about 15% of the hunting population. Interestingly enough, within the past couple of years, nationally, there's been a 67% increase in the number of women that are participating in hunting activities. So if you take from that 15%, I think it's pretty safe to say that you could probably count 3 to 4% of those women are probably actively involved in muzzle loading. My mom hunts with a muzzle loader.
So are long rifles still being manufactured today, or are you strictly working with antiques?
Absolutely, they're being manufactured today. There are basically three different designs of those. You have your historic replicas, which are those that are manufactured to be exact copies of original weaponry from a period in time. Then you have what are called replica hunters, which are those weapons that people will buy to hunt with that will reflect a general style of a particular weapon, but that's where the similarity is in. And then the last is the inlines, which are the modern muzzle-loading weapons, which really, besides the fact that they load the way that they do, other than that, there's really not much difference between them and a modern rifle.
Okay. Well, now you've brought some of these rifles with you today, so let's have a look at some of them.
The first one we'll take a look at is a 45 caliber flintlock, and this particular style here is more in flavor with the true long rifles. This rifle here is actually a very small one. This would be comparable to a 22, if you will, by today's standards. The larger long rifles, which your soldiers would have carried, your frontiersmen and so forth, which range up in about the 60 to 62 caliber, those are pretty big weapons and quite heavy. You had to be a hoss to move them around. The biggest difference that you'll see on this first one is, again, it uses a flintlock, and what that means is there's actually a piece of flint that's held between the jaws, and what happens is powder is placed in the flash pan, the striker is moved down, and when the weapon is cocked and it's fired, the hammer will move forward and strike against the pan, causing it to not only flip open, but a series of sparks down into the powder, which will then hopefully jump a spark into that little hole right there to ignite the powder on the other side where the ball is actually sitting at and fire the weapon. These are kind of interesting in that when you fire them, the first thing that happens is you get this metallic bang and a big flash and smoke, and then the weapon fires. So you have to really try to concentrate on what you're doing, because that first flash you tend to think, oh, that's it, it's over with, and bang. Quite a challenge to shoot the flintlocks. The second type is, this is a 50 caliber percussion muzzle loader, and this is what is called the Hawkins style. This would have been in the period of your mountain man, your fur trappers in the Rockies. This was the rifle that won the Rockies, if you will. It's one of the most the Hawkins is one of the most reproduced muzzle loaders today, if not the most reproduced. They're really they're an accurate weapon. The biggest difference is in the manner that it fires the powder. This is, again, called the percussion system. The powder and ball are loaded into the barrel. You have a cap that goes over the top, and what it does is just like firing a cap gun. When that strikes, it fires off, shoots a little spark onto the powder, and fires the ball out the end of the barrel. And the third one that I've brought today is a modern inline muzzle loader. And this is, I believe, what probably statistically would make up the largest percentage of those that would fall into a muzzle loading category. While they do operate like a muzzle loader, there the similarities end, and it's actually more of a modern rifle, if you will, in terms of what it's made of, the idea that you can have a scope and these types of things. But that has apparently made these companies a lot of money, because there are a lot of these that are sold throughout the year. I prefer the traditional challenge myself. And just to give kind of a comparison between those three, this is the size ball that the 50 caliber Hawkins shoots, and this is the size of the 45 caliber, the flintlock that I brought up the first time. And this is what the inline muzzle loader uses. So you can see there's some substantial differences between the different weapons, and not only in how their ignition system is, but the different calibers and stuff are available to them.
Okay, what kind of wood are those rifles made out of?
The two flintlock and the percussion, those are walnut stocks, and it's a synthetic composite stock on the inline.
Okay. Now, what is the price difference between a commercial and a handmade rifle?
The price can be substantially different. Most of your lower priced weapons, which I would be talking in the $80 to $250 range, those are generally Asian manufactured type of, very generic. The higher that you get up into it, the more expensive it gets. The 50 caliber, the Hawkins type, for example, those are commonly available. They're range anywhere from about $250 to $350. Flintlocks, a commercial through, say, Bass Pro or Cabela, something like that, you're going to be looking at about that same price range. But when you get up into the more custom type of weapons, for example, a gunsmith that you might have make a southern type of long rifle, those would go into several thousands of dollars. And to get into a truly historic piece can get up into the tens of thousands.
Okay. How long does it take to prepare a long rifle for shooting, and how many shots do you get per load of black powder?
If an individual has, if they've practiced and trained on it, you can get a shot off once every 20 seconds. And as far as a load, it's one load, one shot until you load again. So it really comes down to how much lead you have, how much powder you have, and kind of what, to give you an idea of that, what's involved with it, or some of the different tools, if you will. This being a type of powder horn, this would be more in line with the flintlock type of weapon. And the modern day equivalent of that is the brass powder horn. And the way that these are used, these devices contain your powder. This is a measuring gauge, and you notice that there's increments marked on there. So you just can't pour in however much powder you think you need and run a ball down in there. You could end up actually injuring or killing yourself doing that. So you have to know how much powder that you're putting in there. By using one of these, your powder's into your weapon. That's got you straight on that. If you're hunting and you need something a little bit quicker, then there are single quick loads that you would use. This is more used for the flintlock, for the pan. When you put it up there and that retracts, and that empties powder into the pan, and so you don't have to fumble with a lot of the bigger stuff. The sequence of events pretty much runs from getting your powder into a measuring device, the powder into the barrel. At that point there, you'll want to use a patch, and a patch is simply nothing more than a piece of cloth or something that's cut into a shape to fit down the barrel. The patch goes over, the ball sits on top. You take your ramrod. Actually, you'll take a starter, and it'll run it down in there for a couple of inches. Then you take your rod and you seat it all the way in, and that's cock. Put your powder in there, and on the either your cap on the percussion or the powder on the flint, and you're ready to go. And 20 seconds is that's pretty fast, but it can be done with a little bit of practice. And those that really have my respect are those that are able to do it running. And it is achievable. If you recall the movie, Last of the Mohicans, where Daniel Day-Lewis on several occasions is loading his rifle as he's running. That was taught to him by an experimental archaeologist, and they've figured out how they were able to do those things, and it's very realistic.
Wow. Okay, in a battle situation, how effective would a long rifle really be?
It's going to be as effective as the person behind the trigger. That's what it comes down to. And in terms of just pure numbers, if you will, as far as the weapon itself, the earlier flintlocks had a smooth bore, so your range was going to be limited and your accuracy was going to be limited, simply because there was no rifling in the barrel. Once rifling was developed, which caused the ball to spin, that increased accuracy and increased range as well. Then again, it comes down to the training of the soldier. As far as American soldiers, General von Steuben became the Inspector General for Washington there at Valley Forge, whatever, and he's the one that developed the manual of arms and that 20-second loading method, and the Continental Army managed to do quite well after he showed up and got him set straight on that.
Okay. What technological development in weaponry caused the long rifle to go into decline?
Probably the biggest change would have been the development of the first practical percussion system, and it was developed by a Reverend Alexander Forsyth in Scotland. And what he was actually doing was trying to find a way to make the powder burn faster. In doing so, he discovered that by the addition of a couple other chemicals and forcing that ignition through a sleeve, if you will, that he could get a faster firing time, and that led to the development of the percussion system, which virtually every subsequent improvement in firearms is a result of that single technological leap, if you will. And so I really wouldn't say it was so much a decline as much as simply an evolution of the weapon.
Okay, well, if someone were a total beginner and brand new to the field of muzzle-loading rifles, how would you recommend that they get started?
That can be kind of a tough question. If you knew someone that already participated in it, that would be the first place that I would go to. Beyond that, the internet has a wealth of information. My website, longrifles.com, or go into Goggle, just search on muzzle loading or long rifles, and you'll find that there are substantial amounts of volumes of information out there to give you an idea of what's involved with it, what you can expect to outlay in cost, in time. And there are some really good organizations out there as well. Arkansas has an Arkansas Muzzle Loaders Association. There are several reenactment groups that are in the area. The resources are there. It just takes that getting out there and having to find them sometimes and get hooked up with them, and that can be the hardest part. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad I got involved with it.
Okay. Well, that's about all the time we have on today's show, and thanks so much for coming out and talking.
I appreciate it, Shannon.
All right.
Thank you.
For the Caine Interviews, I'm Shannon Caine. Thanks for watching.